name is Kenneth Choice. I am 70 years old. I was born in East Los Angeles and lived as a child, lived in what's considered South Central LA until the age of about 12, and then the family moved to the west part of LA. I had one brother, he passed a few years ago, and one sister. It's interesting because my sister and I, we're 7 years apart, but when she was born, I was recovering from issues with my vision. I had surgery on my eyes. The first one, I was 6, and I later came to UCLA because I had another issue with my eyes where the retinas were growing blood vessels and the blood vessels were popping inside. So I'm being blinded by my own blood. I've had laser surgery, and that consisted of 750 laser shots in one eye and 1,000 laser shots in the other. And I was confined indoors pretty much so. So as she was coming up, she and I hung out together. And now it's the same thing. I went to school here in LA, went to Cal State LA out of high school. And I also went to Los Angeles City College and started off there. I had worked for the Postal Service for about 6 years, and that almost drove me nuts. So I left, and the only thing I knew what to do was what I had learned from my dad, who I had worked for him in coming up, and he was a painter. He painted structures. And when I left the Postal Service after 6 years, I ventured out on my own, and he gave me a few of his customers, and things had taken off. When I went on dialysis, I asked both my grandmothers, they were alive, and I asked, what did people in the family die from? And 3 things popped up on both sides of the family. 1 was diabetes, 2 was heart disease, and 3 is what was known at that time as dropsy. And dropsy, come to find out, is renal failure, because they said that people would just swell up and drop dead. But in doing a little bit more research, my mother told me that I was diagnosed with having high blood pressure as a kid. However, they weren't taking high blood pressure with children at that time. I started on dialysis at the age of 35. I've had 2 transplants in between. The first transplant only lasted a year and a half. The first one, I was 36. The second transplant, it lasted 8 years. The second one, I was 42. And it just slowly started not functioning. I've also done peritoneal dialysis. I've been back on hemodialysis since 2000. And with PD, probably 8 months or so. It was easier, but it was not easier, because all of a sudden now you're supposed to be in bed at 6 o'clock or 6:30, and you're not coming in until 7:30. And that means that you're not getting the full treatment that you're supposed to. So that wound up being a real hassle, because eventually that time catches up with you. Well, it's interesting because I started when there was no DaVita. The only big company was TRC, and doctors, individual nephrologists, were building their own units, and they were sold to DaVita. And starting at UCLA, I had the first technician that I ran into says, I'm going to show you how to get your labs good. And all of a sudden, they made a couple of adjustments, and sure enough, my labs became very good. Then all of a sudden, they're saying, we got to give you more time on dialysis. It started off at 4 hours, and I was having problems sitting there for that long. I said, I need to cut this time down. So they told me to go in and talk to the nephrologist at the time. I went in and spoke with him, and the staff knew I was going in. So when they came back, they said, "What did he say? What did he say?" Well, the doctor told me to run 4:3:45, and I walked in the dialysis unit and said, he said to run 3:30. So they started running me at 3:30, and then all of a sudden they found out. And he said, "Well, doctor wants to see you, wants to see your labs." So he came back and he says, "I see here, for you to get adequate dialysis, in the literature it says that you should be getting a KT over V of 1.2. He says, "I see here, you're getting a KT over V of 1.6. So I'm saying that, gee, that time is working out good. So because of that, I still run now at 3.5. And at that time is during a period of time that I met Dr. Rastogi, because Dr. Rastogi was doing his fellowship. And it's just been one thing after another, probably 15 to 20 years. And he's given me a lot of information on dealing with dialysis. Useful information, not a bunch of lip service, which I appreciate. I really don't know what I would do if I hadn't done dialysis. It just definitely forced me into an area that I was not comfortable with. I started out on Sunday morning, and that Sunday morning, well, I noticed at night, before I couldn't lie down to sleep, I felt as if I was drowning, and I sat up sleeping. When I did get up, I wound up with a nosebleed that would not stop. So I went to the ER, and first thing they did is took my blood pressure, and the nurse looked at me. She brought in someone else. She took my blood pressure. They looked at each other and then looked at me and asked, "Do you mind if someone else comes in?" And now I'm starting to wonder what is going on. So eventually they told me, "We're going to keep you, we'll have you, the doctor see you." The doctor came in, took blood, they ran tests, came back, and the doctor said to me, "Do you know what dialysis is?" And I said, "No." He says, "Familiarize yourself with it, because you will be doing it. Now you can go home and watch TV." And I said, "But I don't really watch TV." "Oh, you will, because I had been one that was working 5 days a week and going to school. So I was constantly moving, constantly doing things. Believe it or not, I have watched a lot of TV since then, but I've learned a lot also. Every other day, I go and meet my best friend, I would have to say, which is that dialysis machine. We've had ups and downs, at least I've had ups and downs on dialysis. Some I would like to forget, some that I can't forget, and really all of them I can't forget. But one thing that has happened, I've had a nurse tell me, "You, to survive this long on dialysis, you must have figured out something." And the only thing that I can say is I realized that I could not consume a lot of fluids in between treatments and then expect to take it off with dialysis. In other words, rely on the machine to take it off. For a simple reason, all of the fluid that I would consume is going to be pushed around by my heart in my body. Then I would go into dialysis, and for 3 hours, 3.5, 4 hours, sit down and have all that fluid taken off. Okay, it sounds like it's a good deal. However, what is that doing to your heart? Because the heart is a muscle, and you have to consider that, or otherwise you will pay. Even though right now I have issues with heart valves, I'm not necessarily having issues with the heart itself. There are restrictions with foods, but you can eat anything. It's just that you have to do it in moderation and know exactly what you are eating. If you want something, have a little bit of it, have a taste of it, and then leave it alone. You've had your taste. But so many of us don't have that self-discipline, and we just go on and on and on. A little bit more won't hurt, a little bit more won't hurt. And before you know it, it has hurt, because a little bit has turned into a lot. And then you have to understand too, what is in the food that you're eating. Because if you don't make that distinction, you can hurt yourself and not even know you're hurting yourself. One thing that kidney disease has taught me is we may look different on the outside, but we have interchangeable parts because of transplants. Now, if that doesn't teach you something, I don't know what will. The one thing that I missed is being able to travel. My parents took us when we were kids by car, just all over the United States. And one thing I really liked about it, we didn't really stay with a lot of relatives. And I've made a few trips. The last one was real interesting because it went down to San Diego. I actually realized, you like to hang out at the beach, you're a beach bum now, except for the days you go to dialysis. I did a lot of that. I just go down and watch the world go by. Watch everyone else having fun. And that was, God, so enjoyable to me.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again. Why'd you have to leave so soon, yeah? Why'd you have to go? Why'd you have to leave me when I needed you the most? 'Cause I don't really know how to tell you without feeling much worse. I know you're in a better place, but it's always gonna hurt. Carry on.
This is something people should hear, He has lived it, right?
Right.
And you have fought it. And we are very, very grateful and fortunate to have you here, Mr. Choice. So thank you. Thank you, and a very happy birthday, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rastogi. Thank you very much. I was just thinking, because one of the questions that they asked is how long I've known you. And all I could say is it's been about 15, 20 years, somewhere along in there. So, we won't.
I was a fellow.
You're a scholarship. Yeah.
So, but Mr. Choice, I think also being proactive, you teach a lot of people in different ways, and one is about taking care, being proactive in your health. Also, I reach out to him when you talk about the patients, calming them down. These are tough times, very tough times, and it looks like these times are going to stick around for a bit. They're not going away, and I think that's where people like you are so critical. And you are respected by everybody. So, when you speak, people listen. So that's the other thing that I'm very grateful for, Mr. Choice. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I started on dialysis at the age of 35, and I'm 70 now. It's not necessarily a death sentence unless you want it to be. It's just an obstacle in the road of life. And you can either grab the bull by the horns and wrestle with it, or you can turn around and run and let it spear you. It's up to you. And one thing I've learned, having a positive attitude, it definitely helps, because everybody has something that they're dealing with. Everyone. And Yours has just come to the surface. Mine has come to the surface. And I talk about it, you know, because there's no need in hiding it. What am I going to hide it from? It's me. It's part of my book of life.